Policy is really important out here, because in 1978 the policy was passed by the Public Utility Commission that the utilities would be decoupled. And what does that mean? That means the revenue of the utilities will be decoupled from the sales of electricity. Because if they're coupled, utility will be incentivized to make you more inefficient, because they will sell more electricity. So that their revenue growth remained the same, but the electricity sales went down because of efficiency. And so they were motivated to make you, as a homeowner, to be more efficient, which meant there are rebates for appliances. There were appliance standards that were introduced for refrigerators, water heaters, etc., which had a huge impact in terms of electricity consumption. And there were building codes that were introduced. And that, the building codes, the building code again is for a permit, for a design. It's not enough to make you efficient, but at least it's one small step towards that. So all those things combined was essential to make homeowners very efficient, because the price signal is really small. The utility bill is about $100, $150, right? So if you make a 20% efficiency, 20% reduction, it's $30 a month. It's $1 a day. At the end of the day, people may not care. So the price signal is not quite there, so that's why the regulatory signal came in. And so that's, I think, one of the reasons why California went that.
I think we have to stop, unfortunately.
Because you asked, there was underlying your question, another question, and that's equity. If you look at India, you consume, as a nation, 5% of the amount on a per capita basis of energy that we do in the United States, 20-to-1 ratio. But 50% of India doesn't have electricity. So the real ratio is not 20-to-1, it's 40-to-1. So there's a huge question of equity that we in this country haven't really addressed yet, but we're going to have to address in terms of bringing our consumption down. One of the most efficient mechanisms that I think we can do, California again is in the lead, is something called the PACE program, which is that a homeowner can, if they go to the municipality, they can borrow money, they have to pay the municipality back, which will issue bonds, but the municipality puts a lien on the house in order to make sure it gets paid. It's a great idea. The house increases in value because they've made an investment in energy efficiency. Unfortunately, one of our brain dead, don't quote me about this publicly, financial institutions in Washington, Fannie Mae, said, oh, no, you can't do that because that subordinates our mortgage. They're not looking at it rationally to make the underlying mortgage more valuable because the house is increasing in value. I think we're going to start moving in that direction. New York is looking at it, and I think we can get it done. So I think that there are going to be some financial mechanisms and policy mechanisms that are going to start resulting in increased efficiency at the residential and the industrial level using versions of these types of programs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can only take 2 more questions, and 2 ladies. Of course, I'm getting strong price signals from organizing. All right, maybe go ahead.
I have a 2-part question. I'm sorry, everyone. The first question is, what sort of changes do you think we'd have to see on the grid in order to prevent a huge blackout like we saw in 2003? And the second part of the question is, what kinds of regulation or price signals would we need in order to bring about those changes?
I'd say a couple things. One is price signals are huge. I could walk into a fast food restaurant in New York City and have more information.
Can you hear?
I can walk into a fast food restaurant in New York City and have more information about what I'm consuming, how many calories I'm taking in, and I can make a choice about, am I going to eat that 1,000-calorie Big Mac or not? I don't have any idea how much I'm spending on my power, except for I get one bill at the end of the month. I have no idea if I run my dishwasher at night. Is that better than running it during the day? None of that information exists. So I think knowledge is critical to getting consumption in the right place, and so that will help with the grid. As far as the grid is outdated. It is made for this is a huge problem in the United States right now. We have a grid that was made up, and it's like power plants are here, people are here. I'll move power from here to here. All right, now what's happening? Well, let's see. Power plants are on top of my roof. There are wind farms that are in the middle where nobody ever was, up in North Dakota and South Dakota. I've got electric cars that are coming in that could be bring power in or take power off the grid. They could be storage. They could be putting it back up. I don't think utilities have any idea what the grid's going to look like in 5 years. I would be shocked if we didn't have another big blackout, because this is one of the most complex instruments that we have in the United States, combined with a massive sea change that it's about to undergo in the next 5 years. So I wish I had a good answer for this, and hopefully Arun's working on some great technology to help us out.
Arun wants to answer.
I just very briefly, one of the positive steps that have happened, and it's a small step over the last few years, especially with the Recovery Act investment, was the installation of what are called phaser measurement units, PMUs, and which measure the phase angle and the current voltage on the grid. I won't go into the details. But the positive thing is that if you start monitoring the grid, there are signals, there are signatures out there which you can tell that something is going wrong. And that is the first step. And then the question is, what do you do with the measurement and how do you control? And that's where we created this program in RPE called Genie. And to look at the grid as the equivalent of what went from the telephone lines to the internet. If you could do that for the electricity grid, it's hopefully the start of that, building routers and things like that with electric power grid. And that's sort of what is starting.
There's actually some extraordinary technology that we're about ready to use. Both Brian and Arun have talked about how when the utilities dump, they suddenly see somebody's using less electricity. They don't know why. They don't know where. So part of it is, how do you make the grid smart by having a wireless system that can tell the utility exactly what's going on at that spot. And once you start gathering intelligence through the system, then you've got responses. You've got something called VAR, which is voltage amperage reaction. It's wattless. That can begin to help keep the grid in sync if voltage drops or voltage, you get to excessive voltage. But if you begin to gather intelligence throughout the grid system, through wireless, which provides information in real time to the system operator, then the system operator can begin to respond, and you can begin to deal with the problem that Brian talked about, which is the intermittent sources of electricity coming from wind and solar. And you make the grid both resilient and flexible. Now that's going to require a fair amount of investment, but I think the outlines of what we need to do are beginning to emerge. We still need to put a lot of flesh on this skeleton so we have a much better idea than where we are now.
And we need some storage.
I wouldn't throw out your candles.
I'm going to take the question from there. Go ahead.
Architecture, 1968. Open question for anyone.
Which IIT?
If we use solar energy by capturing sun rays that are falling on the earth, how would it affect the long-term cooling process of the earth?
Did you get the question?
If you convert electricity, if you convert solar energy to electricity, what about the heat cooling of the earth?
Because we are blocking the sun rays from falling on the earth, which do help maintain the temperature of the earth.
Well, the cooling of the earth has a lot of issues. There's, you're absorbing the visible, you're emitting the infrared. I don't think you're changing the infrared part. But, if the efficiency of solar cells, by just, rules or laws of physics, at least for silicon, cannot be higher than a certain percentage. It's, practically it's about 18% today. Only 18% of the solar energy is actually converted to electricity. 18 or maximum 20%. Practically. In the lab it's a little bit higher, but there is a theoretical limit that you can't go beyond. And so, I don't think, frankly, just my gut feel, it's not going to change the Earth's cooling or heating, because it's a very small area.
But ultimately, electricity is dissipated in heat anyway. So there's an energy balance. I hope. Last question. Absolutely the last question.
Percy Rishani, IIT Bombay.
Thank you.
Along with Chuck Schumer, I believe fuel cells are the real future. Could any of you talk about fuel cells and specifically Honda has a prototype going on for 2 years in California. How's that going? What are your thoughts on that?
The last time we had a clean tech, there's been